Hi everyone, my name is Kay, and today I'll be discussing whether the nature of digital innovation is putting cultural heritage institutions at risk. Museums have long been a repository of knowledge and history. Gray and Black states museums are gatekeepers to and interpreters of the cultural memory of humankind. He points out that internet users now have access to millions of cultural objects online and to information about them. This has raised many concerns amongst scholars, historians, and curators about the continuing relevance of cultural heritage institutions such as museums. After all, why would the average person travel all the way to a museum to learn about history and view the artifacts available when they can do the same from the comfort of their very own home? As time goes on, simply staring into a case at an artifact and reading the signpost next to it is no longer enough for the average consumer. People continually want more. While some academics fear this will put an end to museums, in reality, it means that museums need to adapt to the needs of the current generation. Black explains this as the expectation by modern audiences that they will be able to participate actively, which has the potential to transform the nature of cultural exchange. To this end, museums have been integrating digital technology into their more traditional exhibits. While there are certainly varying levels of success between museums, expecting to be able to change the face of a museum quickly is both overambitious and unattainable. I made a visit to Melbourne Museum in January 2018 and looked at how they have integrated digital media into their exhibits and how that affects the visitor experience. As you can see here, they still have the traditional exhibits that you expect to see in a museum, like this skeleton of a young pygmy whale, or these recreated skeletons of dinosaurs. As we can see here, digital media has been integrated into this exhibit. In one part, there is the dinosaur walk, where you can walk along, view the skeletons of dinosaurs, and get an impression of their size, something that is difficult to grasp from a computer screen. And in the other part, we have some screens available where we can access more information on the dinosaurs. In this exhibit, the Melbourne Museum has managed to use digital technology to enhance the learning experience without detracting from the appeal of a more traditional museum exhibit, and the way in which it uses beauty, intricacy, or sheer size to impress and wow the audience. Now, Melbourne Museum has a good variety of examples to choose from. In their marine exhibit, they use video and audio on what certainly looks like an outdated screen, along with signs filled with information and some smaller artifacts. Their animals display, on the other hand, has a series of interesting uses of digital technologies. Parry explains that, and I quote, "There is a growing commitment to exploring how these new digital technologies can enhance our access to and experience of more traditional objects and collections, not simply through the web, but actually at the exhibit face itself. Indeed, interactivity is seen as an important resource in enhancing interpretation and creating new forms of engagement with museum collections." End quote. This is perfectly exampled here. Not only are there handy touchscreens in each section that enables you to click and learn more about the animals you're viewing, there is also these machines. Now, these machines allow you to point to the animal you wish to learn about, and it can provide you with the same information. While I wish I could have shown you more about such an interesting and well-placed piece of technology, they've proven so popular, especially amongst young children, that it was a challenge just to get a shot of one that wasn't in use. While we've seen that museums can, and do, successfully integrate digital technology into their exhibits, there is another reason that digital innovation will never be able to make cultural heritage institutions redundant. Not all cultural heritage institutions, or even museums, are buildings conveniently located in your local city. A lot of cultural heritage institutions are on the land where important historical events took place. The Anne Frank House, for example, is a museum located inside of and added onto the house that she and her family hid from the Nazis in. When visiting a place where a historical tragedy has happened, you can feel the weight of those events in a way that you will never achieve from just learning about it from books, movies, or standard museums. It is what Amat, Filippucci, and Savouret refer to as an emotional landscape. In their chapter, The Cemetery of France, Reconstruction and Memorialisation on the Battlefield of Verdun, France, in the book War and Cultural Heritage, Biographies of Place, they explain that, and I quote, "Travel to the battlefield began, almost before the war was over, by veterans, relatives, and friends of combatants, and those curious to see locations rendered famous by the unprecedented media coverage of the conflict. Battlefield tourism was seen as a means of raising funds for reconstruction, and in Verdun it was endorsed by the Departmental Administration of the Meuse and by the Verdun municipality. In 1918, the municipality applied for the city to be classed as tourist station in order to gain the right to charge for visits to memorials and military installations, and a war museum was created by the local tourist commission in town. By the 1920s, several local operators offered daily tours of the battlefield, and Verdun boasted 600 hotel establishments. End quote. The memorialisation of Verdun clearly shows how people can feel the difference between visiting the site itself and just learning about it from secondary sources. To use another example, I've included some photographs I took of the Dachau concentration camp memorial site in January 2015. The emotional landscape referred to earlier was very clear at this memorial site. As the 44 people from my tour entered this site, they went from the rowdy, foul-mouthed youths that they were to sombre adults encompassed by respectful silence. Jennifer Hansen-Glucklich explains in her book Holocaust Memory Reframed, Museums and the Challenges of Representation that, and I quote, certain exhibits, displays, and spaces within the museums go beyond documentation to evoke a sense of the sacred of the type that often surrounds Holocaust sites and artifacts. In this way, museums and exhibits seek to involve their visitors in ways that carry them beyond the limits of mere spectatorship and engage them as witnesses. At the same time, museums may use visual forms in unexpected ways to emphasize the irrevocable loss and absence at the center of Holocaust remembrance, and to illustrate the gap between the construction of a Holocaust narrative and the event itself, which is beyond narrative delineation. End quote. The almost tangible weight of history that is felt in places where historical tragedies occur, such as concentration camps and battlefields, is something that is irreplaceable by technology. Nothing will ever be able to compare to the feel of truly being there. Hansen-Glucklich explains that trying to rely on technology to remember instead is ultimately harmful to the way we remember. She states the increasing autonomy of technological memory, that is, the ability of certain images to bear the weight of remembrance away from their original context, can be harmful in its tendency to lead to an image-focused rather than an event-focused remembrance. Cultural heritage institutions and the ground they stand on are an essential component to the way we remember the past. While continuing digital innovation can help enhance our learning, they will never be able to replace cultural heritage institutions who serve to help us remember the past the way we should.